And now we're going to go live to Mexico with our pretty much weekly segment with Janet Phalen, being a news reporter extraordinaire, breaking a lot of doors down, avoiding having your head broke, not all the time, and still whistleblowing with a whistle loud enough to break your eardrums. And welcome back to the show, Janet.
Thank you. Nice to be back on. Yeah, we've got some interesting things to talk about today, I think, specifically concerning the levels of retaliation going on now, aimed at those who are trying to basically protest or expose corruption in the legal system. I would first of all like to take attention to an article of mine, which I've actually been discussing for a couple of weeks, finally published now on New Eastern Outlook, entitled California Goes Dark. And in this article, for those who have not been following the public records of violation saga going on in California, this article pretty much lays out how both the California Department of Justice and other agencies within the California government are simply violating, lying about, and then ultimately ignoring their responsibilities under the California Public Records Act. Now, why is this important? It's important basically because we the people are vested in our right to know what our government is doing. And when we have government agencies, and we're talking now specifically about the California Department of Justice, disallowing public access to records, then what we have is a government that's operating under the cloak of secrecy. Hence the title, California Goes Dark. This secrecy is extending now, apparently, to criminal arrests, which means that since we are not able to get the records, we have requested the records, a recent arrest of a man named Kerry Andrew Crittenden. Kerry was exposing corrupt judges, corrupt police officers, etc., and was recently arrested again. And the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office, the Santa Clara Sheriff's Department and also County Council is refusing to basically abide by the law called CUSAR, which means that if someone is in custody, then his arrest record, the police report, surrounding the arrest, all of this becomes a matter of subject to public disclosure. And this is intended to keep not only, you're talking about secret governments, well, secret arrests, people being arrested and detained on secret charges, but we as the public now cannot find out why Kerry Andrew Crittenden, who you can certainly Google him and see all of the work he was doing to expose corrupt officials. And we cannot now find out why he is being detained. So this is a matter that should concern anyone who thinks that, anyone who is concerned about our legal system, anyone who is concerned that there may be corruption, anyone who talks to other people about this, anyone who emails about this, anyone, forget about going on the air or writing articles, anybody who is concerned that Big Brother might be overstepping himself should really pay attention to the fact that secret arrests are now taking place. And Kerry Andrew Crittenden's situation is exemplary of this. Now, I'd like to give a name here because I did contact a Sergeant James Jensen with Santa Clara Sheriffs who basically tried to lie to me about the public records law and what his responsibilities were. And when I, was able to inform him of the applicability of CUSAR, he assured me that County Council would get back to me. It's been almost a week, nothing. So, Sergeant James Jensen in Santa Clara County, you're busted. All right. Now, this situation is unfortunately becoming the situation of people being arrested, people being retaliated against for exposing, trying to controvert, corrupt. The corrupt legal system is now becoming, sadly, very, very common. We have, for example, lawyers sitting in jail now. Stephen Yagman was well known in the LA area as a very fiery civil rights lawyer, was arrested on alleged IRS violations, went to jail. Richard Fine, who was had an amazing resume as an attorney, had worked for the Department of Justice, all kinds of real blue ribbons. He went to jail for a year and a half on a coercive contempt of court when he blew the whistle on the fact that LA County judges were accepting illegal monies from LA County. They are state employees and they're not supposed to be getting. Oops, there goes my. Okay, they're not supposed to be getting monies from the county, especially when they're hearing cases involving the county. And so he was attempting to correct the situation. Coercive contempt of court is supposed to be like 4 or 5 days, basically, in jail. And he was in for a year and a half, much of it in solitary. Recently, we now have an attorney named Jim Reese, who has been sentenced to many years for allegedly doing what, oh my goodness, I mean, I could name a number of attorneys who have done exactly what they said Jim Reese did, which was to maybe dip into funds that weren't his. The interesting thing about Jim Reese was that he was becoming very aggressive legally against members of the system. He had sued the district attorney down there in the Inland Empire, and lo and behold, he had filed a federal lawsuit against the infamous conservator Melanie Scott. So he has been found guilty of multiple felonies and is, I believe, on his way to the Club Fed or something like that. Recently, David Malik, a civil rights attorney, was arrested carrying a concealed weapon, and others have been suspended. Ken Dikowski, Grant Goodman, Don Bailey, another civil rights attorney out there he was in Pennsylvania. Actually, Bailey is of particular interest because he had served with the United States House of Representatives. Also, another individual with a stellar systemic sort of resume, and kicked out of the bar club for stating that the courts are corrupt. So not only are lawyers facing this level of attack, but also individuals who are, such as Carrie Andrew Crittenden, who are trying to basically expose what's happening with civil rights. And the guardianship issue, which we talk about a lot, is essentially a civil rights issue, because you have an entire group of people, the elderly and disabled, who are now being deprived of their civil rights. So the attorneys that I mentioned here have either been civil rights attorneys or they've been probate attorneys trying to correct the abuses going on in guardianship court. Very interesting, and I just want to bring this up very quickly because I just ran across this today. There's a fellow out in Georgia named Boyd Randall Green, who's facing potentially a year in jail for using bad words in a 9/11 call.
Bad words?
So apparently, bad words, right.
What does
I'm not
bad
gonna
words
say the
mean?
words.
I mean, they're expletives?
Expletives, right. He used an A word and he used a B word. and he is facing a year. He was arrested and is facing a year in jail. Boyd Randall Green. It's Whitfield County, Georgia, and you can all, listening audience, can Google this.
Wait.
And
So he made a call, said these words, hung up, and at some point,
no, he didn't. No, he was trying actually. What he was trying to do was get a particular officer to come out for a reason, and being told the officer isn't available. And at that point, he made a couple of expletives.
And because he swore to an officer on the phone,
he swore.
They came out and arrested him.
That's right, and he's facing potentially a year. There is a
civil
rights
you know
law
what? There was some stuff going on in the 60s and 70s where they swore to police a few times and they weren't arrested. Of course, there is people who did get shot in Ohio, but I digress. That's funny. I mean, that's funny, crazy funny, not hilarious. I mean, we see the videos now where the cops are just like guys who got their little phones out and they're just shooting a guy running out, just popping him around, not once, not shooting him in the leg to go get him. And you can't shoot somebody unless you're the cop can't go just gun somebody down because they want him. It's because he's a danger, he's got a weapon, whatever. So this guy shoots like 5 rounds in the guy, kills him. It's like, what? What's that? So now you can say nasty words on the phone. I mean, I don't do it, but I think it's outrageous. That would be. I thought every time I listen to you, I'm going to cringe.
I'm really worried now. I'm really worried, James, because in my book Exile, in like 3 or 4 places, I use bad language, and I sure as bleep hope I don't get arrested. No, I mean really. I mean this is becoming very disturbing, I think. Obviously, class lines are being drawn. They're the masters and the serfs, and the serfs dare not.
Can you say that name again? Can you say his name again?
Yep, Boyd Randall Green. If you Google him, Whitfield County, Georgia.
BYOD.
BOYD.
Oh, I've got my wrong keyboard here. Randall?
Randall, Randall Green, right. Now, concerning retaliation, I do have a word or two to say here about my own situation, which, as you know, I'm fairly reluctant to talk about it. I just, at times it's so frightful. I just wish it would all go away. But it's not going away. It seems to be escalating, and for my own protection, and also basically so that people can understand what can actually happen to someone, I think it's necessary to talk about this a bit more. Now, concerning retaliation, as the listening audience I think may know by now, I'm here in Chiapas, Mexico, following essentially the murder of my mother by members of the legal system, particularly targeting my mother for reasons that are discussed in my book Exile. And along the way, we had the bad fortune to have my mother encounter a woman named Melanie Scott, who ended up as her conservator. Now, we're fast forwarding a few years after my mother dies. I now have left the country following a police assault that was nearly fatal, and am in Toronto, Canada. And I am at that point in time writing for the San Bernardino County Sentinel. And I made a phone call to Melanie Scott's home, not to her office, because at that point in time she had been divested of the right to work as a conservator. And so I called her at home. I left a message with someone named Annie and asked if Melody could get back to me because I had questions about the Lawrence Yetzer case. Now, you're going to go ahead, I think, and play the member I was calling her from Toronto. You're going to play the voicemail that Melanie Scott left on my phone later that day.
Yes, this is Melanie Scott. You made a huge mistake of calling my family. If you think I kicked you out of my office, you wait till you get near my home and my family ever again. I'm glad this is recorded so you can give it to the FBI so they can look for you at the bottom of a riverbed. Stay away from, oh, here it is. Then again, I'm glad it's recorded so they can look for your body. Stay away from my family.
Now, I'm going to play that again to make sure people can hear the line, which is, I'm glad you're recording this so that the FBI can use it to find you at the bottom of a lake. What?
Riverbed.
Riverbed.
Yeah,
What?
let's play it
Let me
again.
do it again. 'Cause I had to...
And then let's talk about what happened because of this phone call from Melanie Scott.
Yeah, I'm having...
Office, you wait till you get near my home and my family.
I'm having equipment problem here. She's reaching through the board. And
Yes, is she? I've heard she has extraordinary powers.
Janet, this is Melanie Scott. You made a huge mistake of calling my family. If you think I kicked you out of my office, you wait till you get near my home and my family ever again. I'm glad this is recorded so you can give it to the FBI so they can look for you at the bottom of a riverbed. Stay away from, oh, here it is. Then again, I'm glad it's recorded so they can look for your body. Stay away from my family.
now, of course, it begs the question. It sounds like you were like on her backyard, you know, shooting
Right, I was
arrows in her house
Toronto.
or something.
I was in Toronto, right, and I made a phone call.
Yeah, we want to make sure you mentioned that because it was like,
Right. I was in Toronto. She was in Southern California. The number she called back to leave this voicemail was a Toronto phone number. So there was no real doubt about my whereabouts. Now, as a result of this, there was a follow-up phone call from Melanie Scott a day or so later, middle of the night. I think it was called the tippling hour. And Melody called again and left a message. Also, eventually turned this over to the police, in which she said, I want to know your exact physical whereabouts. Now, coupled with the FBI is going to find your body at the bottom of a riverbed and this follow-up call, I made a decision to contact the police in Southern California and file a police report. Now, turned over the voicemails, and lo and behold, something amazing happened. Well, Melody did not get prosecuted for this. In fact, that person, Annie, with whom I left my message, my very professional, this is Janet Phelan from the San Bernardino County Sentinel. I'd like to speak with Melody Scott about the Yetzer case. That person, Annie, went to the police in response to my police report and bore false witness. And she told the police that I'd called Melody threatening to kill her. Now, I advised the police officer when I heard this monstrous lie that I may have taped my phone call to Annie. I had to say may have because if I said I did, I would have possibly confessed to another crime, which is taping a phone call without advising the other party. So I said, I may have a tape. Well, as it turns out, apparently the power that Melody Scott has, and I just had made a joke about that when you said she's reaching through the board or something, apparently is quite astounding because apparently there is now an arrest warrant out for me for making this undocumented, non-existent threat. So, which Annie, who turns out to be Melody Scott's daughter, duly told the police that I had made when I did not. So, no charges filed against Melody Scott. Nothing. No charges are ever filed against Melody Scott. Now, what is going on with this Yetzer case? Because, Melody sounded very frightening. Frightening or frightened? One or the other. Both, maybe.
Both, actually.
Anyway,
but
Yeah. Well, she was definitely going to huff and puff and blow my house down or something. So if you go to the article that we discussed, that I mentioned earlier on in the broadcast, California Goes Dark, there is at one point embedded in the article, which is on New Eastern Outlook, by the way, a link to the article written about what happened to Lawrence Yetzer, what Melanie Scott did to Lawrence Yetzer. Lawrence Yetzer is now no longer with us. The original article about him was called The Misfortune of Inheriting. So anyway, so back to retaliation. So there are many reasons that I do not return to the U.S. I actually don't believe it would be very healthy for me to do so. Melody is now telling everybody who will listen to her, and thankfully there aren't too many people who take her too seriously, except of course for law enforcement. She's telling them that I have arrest warrants. Just to clarify everything, I've never been charged with a crime. I happen to be sort of like a model citizen, but nevertheless, I am concerned, given what I experienced in the U.S., which is duly recorded in my book, Exile. I'm concerned that should I return, I may end up being arrested because Melody threatened to kill me. Now, what's the problem about being arrested? I mean, you go to court and it all gets cleared up, right? So once again, in my book, Exile, I was in police custody for a short period of time in 2003, not arrested, no charges ever filed against me. I had made the mistake of walking into the Long Beach Police Department on January 3rd of 2003, asking for some assistance. This is following a rather remarkable series of events involving the disappearance of my mother, drugs planted in my home, the attachment of this federal spook, Jack Smith, onto my life, which actually was jump-starting the entire nightmare. So I walked into the police department and basically wrote, as I reveal in the book, the police attempted to murder me. So I'm not so sure that I have a lot of faith anymore that I'm going to get any sort of justice should I be arrested even on obviously false charges such as this. So here I am in Mexico. I have now contacted the Ecuador embassy in Mexico City with a request to have an asylum request reviewed by that government. Why do I want to leave Mexico? Mexico is very close in terms of not only proximity, but in terms of its desires and its political, basically, stance with the United States. And my situation here is, following the publication of my book, has become, once again, terrifying. As I discuss in my book, there are basically two forms of attack that I had experienced, which forced me to leave my country. One was repeated attempts to create the illusion that I had committed a crime and therefore to arrest me, and that included drugs planted in my house, this nonsense with trying to arrest someone for shoplifting because they walk out of a store without a receipt. I mean, I walked through a number of these situations and, learned how to protect myself from them. And that level of engagement, entrapment is now happening here in Mexico, as are the other situation that I discuss in the book, which are essentially chemical assassination efforts. Basically, someone can put different kinds of toxins on your doorknob. They can go into your house and put them in your food. I mean, there's lots of ways they can get these toxins on board. But my life is becoming very difficult here now. And as much as I happen to love living in the mountains here the beauty, the woods, and actually the peacefulness. My life has not lately been very peaceful. So I will be sending my letter over to the embassy in Ecuador within a week, and am crossing my fingers that there may be some government who will be willing to give the United States the bird, basically, and provide me with safe harbor.
Well, it's like there's nothing one can say when seeing what you have gone through and what's going through. I mean, it's just that I'm hoping that, I mean, everything has a purpose. I got this whole spiritual thing behind me. Of course, I bet you if I got beat up some more and tested that would really show where my statement comes from. But hopefully there's something happening soon that will affect things. I see things deteriorating and people getting desperate around the world, the powers that be and the negativities. So I don't know. I hope. Is there anything anybody can do? Can they write Ecuador in support of you? I mean, is there anything anybody can do who's listening and watching this?
Well, I really just want people to be aware, of what is going on here. I want to say that I feel extremely fortunate. I think I'm the luckiest girl in the world because I have managed to survive some things that I think are really generally fairly unsurvivable. And based on all this, I dedicated myself to doing the kinds of writing and the research that I'm doing. And I have been able to, put forth a fair body of work, articles that is basically exposing the kinds of machinations, the global agenda of the U.S., and doing so, I think, in a way that gives a different light to this than maybe some of. I certainly have my own perspective. We'll just put it that way. And I just feel incredibly fortunate because before all this happened, James, I was just, another dumbed down American who didn't have a clue that there had been this level of coup, this level of takeover of our government, and that, that these sorts of things could actually happen to someone. So I feel like I've been given a great gift. And I want to be able to continue exercising that gift. And given the circumstances here now, I'm uncertain, that this would be the place to keep doing that. But I don't, I want to make it clear that I am a very lucky person.
You've never, quote, played the victim. And all the times we've talked off the air many times, you've been very proactive and strong in it. And it's, it's pretty good. It's pretty amazing. And I'm glad that you have that and you're going through that. You can not only other people can appreciate there are people out there doing what you're doing, but who knows, you might inspire others to do it too. Everyone's got to just stand where they are. They don't have to go out and do a big deal. Just at any given moment, you have to stand what's for right. And if everybody did that, even if all the little small stands will be a big stand. So I kind of think that you don't have to go out into exile to help with things.
No, you absolutely don't. I 100% behind that.
And so janetphelan.com is the main website for you. And I have right here, I've been scrolling it while you were talking, your articles on NEO, New East and Outlook, which is journal-neo.org. But I do have links on the website directly to your work. You could simply search Google for Janet Phelan NEO, and you're right there. So, anything in closing? Did we get everything?
Oh, I think we got just about everything.
we got a lot.
The expletive deleted is hitting the other expletive deleted, and and people are ending up in a lot of trouble. I'm one of them, and we really, I'm doing what I can to publicize other situations, so that possibly we can reach a point where people understand what the United States government actually is. And once that realization happens, I think these people are toast. So that's it for tonight, and thank you, James.
Alrighty, janetphelan.com, etc. Thank you very much. Again, keep on keeping on.